إن الحمد لله نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear sisters. So today we are going to share two new du'as for seeking knowledge. The first one is Allahumma inni as'aluka ilman nafi'an wa amalan mutaqabbalan wa rizqan tayyiban. And another versions you can find it Allahumma inni as'aluka ilman nafi'an wa rizqan tayyiban wa amalan mutaqabbalan, which means, oh Allah, Allahumma, oh Allah, inni, certainly I, as'aluka, ask you, ilman nafi'an, a beneficial knowledge. Ilm, knowledge. Nafi', beneficial. Okay? Wa amalan mutaqabbalan, and actions or deeds that are mutaqabbal, yani accepted. Wa rizqan, and provision, tayyiban, which is pure. So there are three things here. The first one, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us a knowledge that benefits us, because so many times we acquire knowledge that is not of benefit. And it might be understood in two ways. Either the knowledge that we are acquiring is useless knowledge that do not serve our purpose of life, or number two, it's a knowledge that even though it's a good knowledge, it does not benefit us. We do not change, transform, evolve, grow with this knowledge that we acquire, even though the knowledge is good in itself. Because many times the knowledge is intellectually understood from the aql perspective, but it's not absorbed into the heart. And so there is that knowledge over there, but it's not sinking in. Basically, that's the meaning. And it's really, really interesting. We could talk about useless knowledge as well. Knowledge that do not serve our purpose in this dunya, and it could actually mean a knowledge that not only does not benefit our purpose in dunya, but also goes against the nature of our purpose in dunya. And what is our purpose in dunya? Our purpose in dunya, inshallah, we will see it today with the ayah that we are going to talk about. Now, subhanallah, that does not mean that the only knowledge that we should acquire is deen related. And when I say deen related, I'm talking about related to the prayer, or to the fasting, or to the pillars of Islam, or Islamic knowledge. I'm talking about knowledge that can also be dunya related, a profession. All this knowledge is beneficial, and they also, subhanallah, contribute to our purpose in life. It does, because we will see later how. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us this knowledge that benefits us, and we ask Him to give us actions that are accepted, because we have the intention to do actions, and we have the tawfiq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do them. Yani He give us all the means, He give us the capacity, all that is there, and we can actually achieve the external, or the action itself. But sometimes our actions, in some occasions, might not be worth it of being accepted, due to, let it be the intention, or the way, or Allahu Alam, there are many reasons, and Allah knows best. So we ask Him to help us to do these actions, to enable us to do these actions that are also accepted. And everything in this life got two dimensions, the external and the internal. So the external deed might look good, yes, but maybe internally the intention is messed up. So that action, it's performed, it benefits anyone around us, but it does not benefit me, in the sense that it's not going to benefit me in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anything that benefits me is that which is accepted by Him. So I can do certain actions because it's a way of showing off, or it's a way of well, Allahu Alam, there are so many things in the heart that can be manifesting itself in an action, and the action might look in a way good and everything, but internally we got few issues to still sort out. So we ask him to give us actions that are accepted. Therefore, we asking him to clean our intention and to let us see, our mistakes and where our intention get frustrated or misplaced. And we ask him also to give us a provision which is tayyib. Risk, which is provision, is mainly understood as, our provision that we use for living, let it be the income, the food, etc. But provision is everything Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. From the air to the knowledge to the everything that you see around you, that which is tangible or intangible, is given to you by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But regarding to the main, talking about the main understanding of risk, when we talk about income and food, we ask him to give us a provision which is pure. Tayyib is good, pure, and it also means obviously halal, so that the source of it is halal. And I'll give you an example. We can buy meat which is halal, but the money that we are using to buy that meat is not from a halal way, so it's not pure. Yes, or we can, it's also related to the jobs, it's related to the source, where are we getting these things from. So we ask him to give us a risk which is tayyib, and also everything else which is related to risk, which is everything we have. We ask him to give us a provision which is pure, because based on that purity of that risk, the action itself will be accepted too. There is this hadith of the man who was dirty, his clothes were dirty, and his income was dirty, and his food was haram, and his drink was haram, yet he was screaming, Allah, Allah, making dua. Obviously, that the hadith tell us that the dua of that person is not accepted. How can it be accepted when everything around him is dirt, is not pure, and is not halal? So the same happens. When the provision is pure, then our actions, inshallah, by the hand with the good intention, inshallah, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, will be accepted. Yes, so this is the meaning of this beautiful dua. And it's all related. When we have knowledge that benefits us, we can work on our intentions, we can work on our actions, and we can, decide with the help of Allah and the tawfiq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from where or in which path to walk in order to get our rizq. So it's three things that are related. And the other dua is a very beautiful dua. It says, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min ilmi la yanfa'u wa min qalbi la yakhsha'u wa min nafsi la tashba'u wa min da'watin la yustajabu laha. Allahumma, O Allah, inni, I, a'udhu bika, I seek refuge in you. We explain the word a'udhu, when we say a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. So here's the same, a'udhu bika, I seek refuge, no billah, bika, because I'm expressing myself directly to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I don't need to say Allahumma inni a'udhu billah, but Allahumma inni a'udhu bika. And also, when we say this Allahumma, it shows that we are talking directly to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes? In second person, in mukhatab. So that's why we say Allahumma. Inni a'udhu bika. I seek refuge in bika, in you. Min ilmi. From a knowledge. La yanfa'u. From a knowledge that do not benefit. Similar to the dua before, we ask him a knowledge that benefits us. Here we are seeking refuge in him from a knowledge that do not benefit. That is explained. وَمِنْ قَلْبٍ, and from a heart, لَا يَخْشَوْ, from a heart which is not fearful. Here's the translation. From a heart that do not have khushu'. Khushu' is a kind of fear, but it's not a fear like khawf. Yeah, the fear of khawf, fear that that makes you scared, that makes you anxious, that makes you nervous, that do not let you be in peace. Khushu is all the contrary. It's a knowledge. Sorry, it's a fear that lets you see your reality because you see his reality, and it makes you feel in peace when you see his grandeur, and it makes you stay in a in a in a in a moment of humility because you are seeing who he is, up to obviously our capacity, which is very, very limited. Yani basically, when you understand who Allah is in the means of our capacity, which is very limited, it's natural that when the heart recognizes him, produces or enters in a state of khushu', of humility, of fear. But fear of what? It's a fear that is conscious fear. It's a fear which is respect. It's a fear which is obedience. It's a fear which leads you to praise him. It's a fear that makes you run towards him, not away from him. It's a complete different fear. The word fear maybe it's not the best meaning for it, but it's related to it. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us a heart. We seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from a heart that does not fear, that does not have khushu' for him. وَمِن نَفْسِ, and from a soul لَا تَشْبَعُ, from a soul that does not get satiated. Our nafs, our ego, our desires always want, always is looking for a form of satiation who it is never there. We buy something and we think that when we buy it we will be happy, and then once we get it, 2 seconds after it's in our bag, that's it, we want something else. There is this desire of dunya. The nafs always desires dunya. The desires, it's complementing the heart. The heart in itself desires akhirah, desires peace, desires Allah, desires nur. The soul, what we call the desires, which is related to this dunya, desire this dunya, and it's like following the dunya, but it's never satiated because dunya does not have the capacity of producing happiness. So we ask him to, or we protect ourselves, we seek protection in him from a soul that does not satiate from its desires. Because when the soul is not, it's not satisfied, we are going to live our life following to achieve that what we think at that moment it's what we need. So for a clear example is our system of life today in this world. We grow up with this mentality that we have always to look for happiness, to search happiness, to go after happiness, and happiness is having this, having that, doing this. So once we are one step ahead and we are achieving finally what the dunya is telling us, the system is telling us what to achieve, we are still not finding it. And then we see ourselves in a successful careers with money, health, beauty, husband, children, and everything that we have always material possessions, and we are still searching because that promised happiness is not there. That's when depressions come. That's when lots of issues, mental issues and emotional issues appear, because there is no satiation. And so here what we are asking to protect is to be able to see that the soul will never get satiated from dunya. So therefore to control it. So in order to let our real ruh, our real self, emerge. When we let our real self emerge, then we find contentment, we find peace, we find happiness, we find, regardless of what surrounds us. Yes, the external can move emotions, can contribute positive to that sensation, but it got nothing to do in a sense that if it's not there, still the peace can be there. Still the happiness can be there. Might not be expressed emotionally, and it might I not be laughing, but I am at peace. I am serene. I am in sakina. That's like serenity. I am in calm state. Because happiness got nothing to do with the external world, which is only perceived by our senses, which is completely related to the dunya. Eyes, nose, taste, touch, the senses. And obviously the perception and the understanding of the reality, or the so-called reality that we are looking in the exterior world. If that would be true, if happiness would be what we perceive as happiness, then we would say that prophets weren't happy people, that saints weren't happy people, that majority of scholars that have walked this earth weren't happy people, because they had difficult lives according to the perception of what's good and what's wrong. They had, many of them, limited material possessions. They have lots of issues to work and deal with, and many of them, for example, scholars or saints, were people who died and probably killed by other humans at their time. So we can say that they were not happy people. Otherwise, we can read about the lives of great scholars like Imam al-Bukhari or Muslim, and all of them, Imam Malik, Imam Abu Hanifa, all of them, and we can tell how much they suffer, how much they went through, but they were happy people. So again, we ask Allah to protect us from that soul that makes us attached to the dunya and is confused thinking that the dunya is going to give it the happiness. And we ask Him to let us grow in our real understanding, our ruh to really take over. Yes? And also we seek protection in Him from a dua, or from the du'as, da'watin, plural, that are not answered. La yustajabu laha, that are not answered. We ask Him to protect us from Him not answering our dua. Basically, when we are asking Him that, we are asking Him to protect us from everything, all the actions, let it be of the heart or of the body, of the limbs, that cause His displeasure with us and lead Him to not accept our prayers. So it's a very beautiful and complete dua. And we start, inshallah, with these two duas, our lesson of today. So inshallah, we will continue with the ayah, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. 4 words, or we can say 5 if we count wa, which is a particle as a word, which is it. So 5 words. إِيَّاكَ, only you. نَعْبُدُ, we worship. وَإِيَّاكَ, only you. نَسْتَعِينُ, we seek help in. إِيَّاكَ, it's not only you. it's not, doesn't mean anta, you. It means only you. Iya, which is preceded, and ka, which it's referred, is the how do we say it in English? Pronoun, which means you, masculine, second person, singular. Only you. Is like nobody but you. And it's very interesting because I can say anta na'budu, we worship you, or na'buduka, we worship you, which will be the correct way to say na'buduka, we worship you. But that can also mean we worship you, and it's not accepting us from worshiping other ones. Yes, so I can say I worship you, but that doesn't mean I only worship you. I worship you, but I worship also this and also that. But when I say iyaka, it's only you and none but you. Na'budu. Okay? And when we say this ayah, iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in prayer, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala respond to us saying, this is between me and my servant, and he will have what he has asked me for. Okay? Na'budu. Na'budu comes from the root word ain ba dal. Na'budu is in present, in what is called the time mudari, yani present. It means, and it's plural, first person, plural. So we worship you. This noon here means we. Okay, we na'budu, we worship. Okay, when a verb is in present in mudari, it's action which is happening now, but it's constantly happening. You know, it's not I am worshiping you. We will see the difference in English. If I say I am worshiping you, it might mean I'm worshiping you right now. But when I say I worship you, it means I usually do it. I'm doing it today, and I will continue doing it as long as there is an exception of it. Exactly. That's what it's called present imperfect, because it's not finished. It's not just taking place right now and it's over later on. Yeah, it's an action which is kind of constantly happening. Yes, so we worship you, so, to you only. The verb abd, okay, we have the name Abdullah, which means the servant of Allah. Abdul Rahman, the servant of Ar-Rahman. Ibad, the plural of abd, which means the worshippers. And abid, another plural, which means worshippers or slaves. So we have this word that means a slave, it means servant, it means worshipper. Why? Because it has three meanings when we talk about worship. The first is worship and devotion. The second one is submission and obedience. Okay, and the third one is subjection and servitude. So when we talk about the slaves, we could say that the slave and their master in this dunya, they fulfill the two, submission and obedience, subjection and servitude. But when we talk about worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or being ibad of Allah, the three are implied. Worship and devotion can be any action, ritual, prayer, any act that we do in order to show devotion, and is a way of worship. And all religions got their way of doing their prayer, of, for example, doing prostration, kneeling, putting the hands in certain positions and, raise a prayer, some words, some, reciting certain, let's say, mantras or du'as or dhikr. Yeah, there are different ways of worship and devotion in the world that we've seen throughout history, and every culture keep their own. Yeah, so when we talk about worship and devotion in Islam, we can talk about the 5 pillars of Islam, because those are the actions that we perform, plus others that are extra. For example, dhikr is a form of worship and devotion, reading the Quran, making dua, but when we do talk about Hajj, it's a way of worship and devotion. When we talk about even Siyam, which is an act of worship and devotion, that we are doing while abstaining of doing something. So it's also a part of it. So all of this, it's what is understood by worship and devotion. Another way, or the second aspect of being an abd of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is submission and obedience. So once we pass the first, then we talk about submission. What is submission? Remember, the word submission in Arabic comes from the root word salama, aslama, yuslimu, islam, which means to submit peacefully to something or to someone. In this case, we refer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is submission? What do we understand by the word aslama, which means he submitted, yuslimu, he submits, Islam, the action of submission? It's very interesting because when we say Islam, it's a noun, and we understand it as a noun, Islam as a ideology. But Islam is actually not an ideology. Islam is an action. It's a verbal noun. It's called in Arabic a masdar. For example, when we talk about ideologies, we say, for example, communism. It's an ideology in English, yes. And we can say socialism, capitalism, and then obviously the other religions as well in English. We say Buddhism, Judaism, etc. But Islam, we don't say Islamism. Actually, the term Islamism, it's a different term. It's not Islam. Islamism is used for understanding those groups that are trying to impose something called an ideology of Islam, which is not really the Islam that we know of. So Islam is not an ideology. And this is a very interesting thing, a very interesting concept to understand. Islam is submission. And when we say submission, we mean giving up, letting flow, letting go. Let the Lord, let God, let Allah take control. Remember that He is Khaliq. Remember that He is Mudabbir, the one that controls the affairs of His servants. Remember that He is the Rabb, the one that nurtures, the one that creates, the one that owns, the one that guides, the one that controls the affairs of His servants. Okay, when we say to Allah that, also when He say Allah is Maliki Yawmiddin, what does He respond to us? The servant has trusted his affairs to me, because we are recognizing His power, His lordship, yes, over all times, and especially we are referring to the day of Deen, day of judgment. So submission doing Islam is an act which is obviously external. That's why we follow certain pillars. We follow rules and regulations. We stop ourselves from doing certain things. That's when the word obedience comes from. We can talk about when He forbids things, we abstain from doing them. That's part of the obedience. Okay? And submission is just letting Him take the control of our lives. Not that He's not taking it usually. He is always taking control, but we are fighting against that reality, thinking that we are in control of our own reality. And it's very interesting because we get tired, and it's like, just imagine that you're trying to push a wall that it can be moved, or you're trying to push a mountain. Just imagine yourself in that, and you live all your life pushing that mountain or that wall. And you make those stops at times and say, oh my God, I'm tired and I have to carry on pushing. Because you think that you are going to one day move it. Or even worse, there is an earthquake and it moved and you think that it was your own strength. So submission is just stopping at that moment and knowing that you can't change the wall. Then you might better stop, look at the wall, and accept the wall that is there. And that does not mean, submission doesn't mean to not be active person, creative person, or the proactive person. All that is there, but recognizing that he got control. So when a plan gets frustrated, you can accept with submission, because you know that your Lord is not giving tawfiq for this thing to happen. So, and if you are able and you have the tawfiq, the success to achieve something, you know that he has given it to you. And he put you the means. And he also let rise in you the interest and guided you to achieve that. That is submission. Submission is not laziness. Submission is not apathy. Submission is not just sit and wait for things to happen in our lives. Submission is to walk towards them using the means that we've been given, and understand that he's giving us a tawfiq, and ask his guidance to do it right, and ask his forgiveness if we haven't done it right. And if we are able to achieve it, know that it's he who has given it to us. And obedience is obey rules and regulations. And we obey at all times because our external obedience shows our internal submission. Yes, so these are external and internal. Worship is external. It's an action. Devotion is what moves you to do that worship. It's the internal feeling towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And due to that internal feeling, you do an external action. So we can talk about Iman and Islam. We have an internal movement. We have a belief. We have Iman, right? And then that faith is shown in our external actions, which are the 5 pillars, and many others, of course, any external action. Submission is an internal state of submission to him. And obedience is the external demonstration of that internal submission. And it's very interesting because I can obey for another reason, which is not submission. I can obey due to rebelliousness to, for example, my parents. When a person, let's say, for example, I convert to Islam, and I am challenging my parents who are Christians. So I obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by acting and doing what Islam asked me to in order to challenge my parents. So that the intention that is not submission to Allah. And many others. I can do an external act of obedience due to I feel embarrassed, so I have to pray because my friend is Muslim and she's here, and then I have to pray because it's time for us. But if she wouldn't be here, I wouldn't pray. Yeah, so you can be doing an act of worship because you're embarrassed or riyah or show off. Or I can do an action to pretend in front of other people that I'm very good. So, for example, give a big amount of charity because some people are looking at me and, they are expecting me to do it. So, or they are not expecting me to do it, but I want to show off that I am very generous. So, obedience and submission need to go hand by hand as devotion and worship. Because it goes back to the same. I can be doing acts of worship, but not due to devotion. And then subjection and servitude. And this is very interesting. Subjection is a very interesting word because we are talking today about freedom. And it has got to the stand that we think that freedom is doing whatever we want. We don't want to have any kind of subjection. It all started, we want to be free in the land. We don't want to have governments that subject us. And then it also has gone to the family levels. We don't want to have a subjection to the hierarchy of the family. That means no subjection to the parents, no subjection for the woman to the husband. Yes, today when we talk about subjection to the husband, it's an offense, and it's awkward mentality and we relate it to oppression of the women. When there is a subjection, what is subjection? Subject to, when we say something, this is subject to the other, is, well, it sort of depends. An action depends on its subject. When we say this promotion is subject to terms and conditions, in a store, when a promotion or a deal or an offer is subject to terms and conditions, yes, it can be applied only if this and this are met. And we always have subjections, even if we don't want to. It's an utopian, it's an ideology. It's an imagination. It's a fantasy to think that we can ever live without subjection, because we are subject to the law. The law, the traffic law, the country law, the community, the family, and the deen as well, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So why do we give and we acknowledge any other law, but we don't want to acknowledge Allah's law? It's very interesting, because we call that being backward. Because today we want to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a being who does not put restrictions on his servants. But there is a subjection. And it's internal. It comes from inside. You know that you can do this subject to the rules of Allah. And every time that I want to do something, every time that I feel in a way, as a Muslim, as a person who submits to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I need to look if what I want to do, how is it subject to the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I heard in a lecture recently, it was very, mashallah, interesting. Every part of the sacred law has an immense wisdom and benefit that majority of times we are unable to see. And it's not new, but we've always have discussions throughout the history about the law of Islam. It's like a big shock for some people. Why do we do this, or why don't we do that? Even we can take the sacred law and explain it in ways that is not real. Like, yes, we can mix it with culture. It has been mixed with culture. It has been mixed with certain mentalities and ideas that are not really healthy for society, like chauvinistic or feminism or whatever. Any extreme, obviously, is unhealthy. And yes, we've tried to explain our understanding of Islam from our nafs and from these beliefs that are not necessarily the reason behind the sacred law. And we could talk about, for example, the why of hijab, and some people might explain it in a very chauvinistic point of view. And so to the point that it looks like oppression to the woman, and put the guilt on the woman for the incapacity of men of controlling their desires. And that's not what it is about. We could talk about the prohibition of alcohol. And we can say that it is because this and this and that, when we don't know. But what we know is that behind the law, the sacred law, there is an immense wisdom and benefit for mankind. And it's part of being the ibad of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be subject to these rules and regulations, and to do this inner question all the time. Can I do this action? Can I do that? Can I? And then search and find ourselves subjects to the Quran and the Sunnah, because it will be of great benefit for ourselves, our body, for our intellect, for our soul, for our heart. Not only ours, the people around us. Sacred law always benefit us at a personal level, at a family level, at a community level, at a social level, at a worldwide level. When I act in harmony with the sacred law, I am benefiting the whole world, even if I'm not able to see it. It's like energy. It's like energy waves. Good actions have their frequency. Bad actions got their frequency. When I do an action because I feel entitled to do whatever I want, because I am a free person and I am disobeying the law, I am creating an internal chaos, a family chaos, a community chaos, a social chaos, and a worldwide chaos. It is like that, but I can see it because it's also like waves. So that is a huge benefit. And then who is the one who can know, who has the power to know what is good at all levels? Because I might like something that at a basic level looks like it's beneficial to me, but, and even my family, and even I say this is an wow, amazing thing, but it end up that 20 years down the road, me applying that shows its cons, and it's how it has affected people around me. That's what has happened with ideologies that are man-made and religions that are man-made. So the whole world have seen throughout history the consequence of applying its own law or of changing Allah's law. And Islam offers us that opportunity to understand and realize that Allahu A'lam, that Allah knows best. It doesn't mean that we are not going to make mistakes, but there is the chances of having harmony in life are only lying in the application of Islam in our lives. Forget about country-wise, social-wise, law-wise. I'm talking about personal life. You in your home with yourself, you will see the difference. Because Islam offers you this balance of external law, and this external law have some consequences that are internal. It affects you positively. It gives you peace. It gives you happiness. It gives you contentment. It gives you all of that. When it's obviously done with the good intention and, rightly done. And it's external. It's external. It's so external. And it also benefits you at a social level, because when you are a practicing Muslim, you are a person who is likable. You are good to your neighbors. You are good to your family. You are good to society. And you're not talking about Islam. You're not, trying to convince people about anything, because your job is not to convince anyone. It's just to do good. And that's the other part. That's what Islam brings you to. Once you're subject to this, you are serving others. You are in servitude. Servitude to Allah means servitude to the others. Now, when you are a practicing Muslim, but you are not a nice person, then there is something that is not working right. And there is something that you are not doing right. When I am a practicing Muslim, and it doesn't mean that I don't have things to work in. Obviously, throughout life, I will have my internal jihad. What is jihad? My internal struggle. of changing this or analyzing where this is coming from and working on it. This is natural. But there must be a change. There must be a kind of evolution, isn't it? An evolution is maybe seeing more and more deeper my inner issues and maybe feeling overwhelmed by all what I found throughout years and continue working on it. But if I'm just externally applying Islam, but I'm not a nice person, I'm a bitter person, I have jealousy in my heart, I have envy in my heart, I have bad feelings towards others, I gossip about others, there is something that I am doing wrong. There is something that is not working right. Because I am abandoning the unity of Islam and going through one of the polarities, external probably, and not working on the internal. Islam is a unity of the two polarities, internal, external. And as much as I grow in an external path, I should grow in an internal path. And we can talk about the three dimensions of Islam. Islam, Iman, Ihsan. And the three should go hand by hand. I act accordingly to the law. It makes growth in my belief and connection to my Lord in Iman. And I work on the depth of it, which is beautifying my heart, purification of my heart, of my nafs, and purification and embellishment of my actions and of my character. That is the whole Muslim. Islam is is holistic, and Islam is a one thing which covers all those dimensions of mankind, not only external aspect. Quran is not a constitution, but also it's not only a spiritual book, but it's also not a theology book that gives you the understanding of God. It's a whole thing. It's a whole. Islam is a whole. It's not only one way. And maybe this is our issue, that we focus so much on external, and we leave behind other things. Or we can just focus on theology, and then we become very rigid people, and we are judging those around us that have a theology or an understanding of theology that differs from what I've learned. And we leave behind. And then when we go to one of the corners, one of the extremes, we are going through polarity, we are taking parties, we are breaking the unity and the balance of the deen. Because it has to go in all directions. Horizontal, vertical, and in depth. The three dimensions of Islam. It has to work towards that. And it's obviously a process. And it reminds me of the book, The Alchemist, when the king asked Santiago, because Santiago in the book, if you've read it, this book, The Alchemist, Santiago decides to go and visit the king, who is the wisest man on earth or something like that. I don't remember very clear. I read many years ago. But he tells him to teach him something. And then he gives him a spoon with the oil and told him, go and come back after 3 hours. And then when he comes back with his oil intact, he didn't let it spill from the spoon. He asked him, did you see my kingdom? And he said, no, I was busy taking care of the oil. So he said, go back and look around you. And then come back after 3 hours. And then 2 hours, 3 hours, I don't remember very well. But anyway, he came back after some time and he asked him, he was so excited, telling him everything he saw. And then the king asked him what happened to the oil. And he just realized at that moment that he has spilled the oil. And he told him, this is what it's about. Looking around you, enjoying but keeping the oil in the spoon. That is the balance. That is the balance. That is what it's about. It's about keeping the oil, keeping it clear, but also seeing the world around you. So it's about the two sides. We keep our rules and regulations in order. We try as much as we can to work on it, but we work in our heart. We work in our nafs. We work in our relation with other people. You know, we do that to both sides or to all the dimensions, and we will have a whole Muslim. That's the difference between the Sahabas and the first generations and us. And the first generations, and after that, after all the generations that has passed, generations in the past compared to generations now, and so forth and so forth. And that's the difference. In that, I would call it partial Muslim. A partial Muslim is the one who only takes one side and want to keep on it. That's very common, and that generates a lot of parties. Because if you would keep it as a whole, it would be harder to divide as a community. Because there are some that give more importance to one part aspect of Islam, and there are others that hates so much how the other gives so much importance to this aspect and goes to the whole extreme. And it's very interesting because in psychology they say that the thing or that what you hate the most in the other is just the projection of your shadow. Yani is showing you who you are indirectly or very directly. So it's very, very interesting because when I judge so harshly and with so much passion someone, that person is showing me my own judgment. Yes? My own judgment. And I'm judging her, for example, for being judgmental. Yet, see me here judging her for being judgmental, doing exactly the same. I'm being judgmental too. Or is showing me something about me that I don't like, but I'm not able at that moment to accept. When we open ourselves to consciousness and we see that, then we are able to transcend that and actually thank the person, even without telling her thank you, for showing us that aspect of ourselves. That is taqwa. That is one aspect of taqwa, is the capacity of seeing yourself. And once you do that, you give it to Allah, you submit it to Allah, and you say, I found this in me. That is how we relate to people. We relate to people because people show us who we are. That's the importance of the neighbor. That's the importance of the family. That's the importance of the children. That's the importance of the parents. Yes, there is a hierarchy. Yes, there is a system. There is a respect, but there is also a relationship that goes deeper, and that these souls are meant to be together in this world for a reason, for a purpose, and all of them share a communitary purpose, which is worshiping Allah. But we just do it in different ways. We have the uniform ways, which is our practices, but we also have our individual struggles that we have to render to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So my neighbor shows me aspects of myself. My society shows me aspects of myself. We have those hadith that talk about that the leader, which is given to a nation, shows the aspect of the community. That those who are oppressed later on become oppressors. Or usually those that are oppressing were oppressed. And so when we complain about our governments, we need to know that they are showing us our reality. When we complain about our community, they are showing us who we are. And this instability in internal grudge against each other is showing us our own aspects of ourselves. That is the perfect, and the world is the perfect scenario to work on our own selves. If the world would be perfect as we talk about it, we wouldn't have the chance to discover our own problems. And at the end of the day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that what we have to bring him is a heart which is sound. It's really interesting that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala won't ask us, about theology, in a sense that he won't ask us on the day of judgment, okay, what are my attributes? And what do you think about me? Am I in the heaven or not? Or I am transcending and I'm not above anything, or I'm above something, or, all these discussions that we have. He will ask us to bring a sound heart, a qalb salim, and he will ask us for our actions and who we were to the others, because he knows that we are unable to understand him anyway. It's outside our capacity. So where do we put our energy? Where do we put our energy? And it's really, 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 really worth taking a look at this. I'm not saying don't learn properly how to pray. Learn properly how to pray. But don't learn properly according to the scholar who is teaching you, because according to the scholar who is teaching you, you will take this as the proper knowledge. But don't forget that the people that pray slightly different and not obviously very different, in Islam there are many differences of opinion within Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Don't forget that if the other person follows the scholar who taught him based on of Sunnah Hadith to move the fingers throughout tashahhud versus the one who told him only to move it through this part of the tashahhud, don't forget to never, or to watch out if you are doing it in order to prove the other to be wrong. Because that is just showing where this action is coming from. And if the action is coming from proving the other wrong, only shows your own insecurity and your desire to prove the other wrong in order to you feel yourself secure. And when you see that, you need to back up. You need to back out and you need to just, analyze yourself and revamp and reinstall, or whatever you need to do, refresh your intention. Because you do need to search knowledge. You need to seek for knowledge. And your obligation is to seek for a knowledge that is authentic, but never to prove the other wrong. Because that is what we are suffering today as a community. We always have the need to prove the other to be wrong. And the bottom is our own insecurity. We do not believe in ourselves. We feel very little and inferior, and so we are always trying to feel better and greater than the other. And when you are feeling little and small, it's because you don't know who you are. And you don't know who you are because you think you are a name, an age, nationality, a race, a birthday, and a name, and all of that things that you think you are. And you don't see that you are beyond that. That you are a soul that came to this world to recognize and worship Allah. That you already recognized Him before, but to remember. And that you were given the chance to experiment His manifestation in creation. So let's not forget that. Let's not forget who we are. Because when we are just feeling ourselves that we are the body that is taking us from place to place, that is used as a vehicle in this dunya, that's where the feeling of separation, the feeling of inferiority, the feeling of fear, all is coming from there. To feel so limited. That's why we fear so much death. What we don't understand is that death is the new birth. It's like you leave this world to enter in the next one. As you, when the ruh was blown in your mom's belly, you die from a life to enter in a new one, in the human life. And you are not only human, you are a soul. You are a soul. You are not only a human. The human body is just your vehicle. Your soul is what you need to look after. You need to look after everything. You need to look after your body too. It's your niyama, and it's amana from Allah. But it's not the only thing you are. Because if you think that the only thing you are, then that explains why we are like we are. And if we want to change the world, as we always say that we want to change the world, we want to change the world, we reach certain age and we are so tired of trying to change the world and we realize that we couldn't, then we give up. But what we are just not seeing is that changing the world is about changing ourselves. And changing ourselves is about waking up. And Islam is a path of wake up. Taqwa comes from wiqaya, which is being conscious, being awake, being aware. Versus the opposite is ghafla. Ghafil is the one who is in deep sleep, unaware. We come here, when we are children, we are pretty much awake. Then we grow into adulthood and we sleep. And Islam is the path of awakening us throughout life. Not a path for judgmental behavior and rejection. Islam is pretty inclusive. Islam is very diverse, but it also has its uniformities. But uniformity, which means that we do things, all of us, we do things that are similar. It's more about unity than uniformity, actually. We have unity in us, and we believe in unity, but that doesn't mean uniformity, which means not all of us have to be exactly the same way. So, worship, going back to the verse, Iyyaka na'budu, only to you we worship, only to you we worship, only to you we feel devotion, only to you we submit, only to you we obey, only to you we are subject, and only to you we serve. And when we worship and have devotion only to Allah, and we only submit to Him, and we only obey Him, then we start serving others. We start helping others. We start establishing good relationship with others. Because worshiping Allah is not only praying 5 times a day. Worshiping Allah is since the moment we are awake, even throughout sleep. From the time of awareness to the next time of awareness, because sleep is a kind of death, isn't it? We are completely unconscious of our body at that moment. We are worshiping Allah. Are we aware of that? So, every action I do, am I worshiping Allah or I am not worshiping Allah? Am I serving Allah or I'm serving my nafs, my desires? When I am talking about my neighbor, when I am thinking negative about my neighbor, to whom I'm serving, whom I worship, this is from where this action is coming from, and towards where is that action coming from. When I'm working and fulfilling my obligations toward my employee, coming on time, following the rules, doing my job, who am I worshiping? The company? No, I'm worshiping Allah, because He asked me to be always a straightforward person, to do always things right. When I'm working in a company and I'm fulfilling a job that is of benefit for mankind, I'm worshiping Allah. When I'm developing my creativity and I am worshiping Allah. But if my attitude is, oh, here I am worshiping Allah, Iyyaka na'budu, but look at the other one. Look how she prays wrong. Look how she thinks wrong. Look at the scholar she's listening to. What a scholar. What is this person? He believes that. That's wrong. That if we are, and I'm not saying with this, I'm not denying the fact that some people got a really misunderstanding of Islam and are teaching things that are not part of Islam. I'm not denying that reality. I am talking very, very much in general. Or look at this one, she doesn't wear hijab. Look at that one. Look at this one. Look at when we are always in this judgmental activity that have taken us over, perceiving reality according to our imagination, not as it is. We are missing so many opportunities because the moment we awake, we start seeing, what is this feeling showing me about myself? When I hate the other does not suffer. I suffer. I am the one feeling the hatred. Therefore, I'm responsible for this feeling. It's being generated in me. And it's affecting me. But it's showing me something also. And I need to find out what it is. And this is a very individual work. This is a very individual work. So now, the next time from now on, let's do this exercise. Every time I have a judgmental attitude towards someone, what is this saying about myself? That does not mean that we do not observe things that might be mistaken and say, no, they are fine. It's okay to steal. It's okay to, no, I'm not it's also not about that. Understanding and observing has nothing to do with taking things personal and judging them from my mental perspective. Because I can have a objective observation about something and realize that that action is not good. It's not healthy, it's not beneficial, it's wrong. From there, to judge the person like if it's my obligation to pass a judgment about that person, thinking that that person got the doors of repentance and of Jannah closed forever and ever. I don't know what I'm talking about. Because there is this hadith that people might be at this age very close of entering hellfire and they do something that takes them to Jannah, and vice versa. There might be people that their life, they live it very perfectly good and they are at this of entering in Jannah, and one word might take them completely to Jahannam. And this, we take it very lightly and we're thinking, okay, let me check my words. But we are not checking about our judgments, because the tongue is a spoon. The heart is like a pot where a soup is boiling. The thoughts and the feelings are boiling inside, and the tongue only brings out what is cooking in it. So my tongue is actually showing me who I am. What am I thinking? What is inside me? So it's just not a word said by mistake. Because I might say a word that is wrong with a good intention, and maybe I had a wrong understanding, but my intention wasn't right, or do an action which is not right. For example, that man who asked to be burned and his ashes to be scattered. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala restored him and asked him, why did you do this? And he said, I was afraid, and when he knew that this goes against the law. And he said, I was afraid of meeting you, so I tried to escape. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgave him and entered him in Jannah and had mercy on him. Why? Why? Because of his niyyah, because of his fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even though his action wasn't right. The prostitute who gave water to the dog versus the woman who was a practicing Muslim, yet let the cat in a cage didn't feed him, nor let himself be fed, and died, and she entered in hellfire. Islam is full of these examples. And it's telling us all the time, watch out. Don't only go by the external perception of things. Or like that woman who committed a crime, and she asked Rasulullah to punish her, and she came repeated times until finally she was punished because he was applying the law of Allah, and he couldn't not do justice when things are just there. And I don't know if you know the story. I am assuming that you know what I'm talking about. And it's about the hadith of the story of the woman who committed adultery, and she came and confessed, and Rasulullah turned his face saying, "Khalas, you go repent to Allah." And she said, "No, I want you to purify me." And he said, "Go wait." And then she came back and said, "I'm pregnant." So he said, "Okay, go and have your baby." And then she came back and said, "Go and breastfeed him." And he was giving her all the freedom to just go and disappear and restart her new life and make tawbah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts tawbah. But she wanted to be 100% purified. And then she came last, and khalas, he had to apply the law because she was there. He could not apply the law. And she was punished. The capital punishment was applied to her. And then one of the Sahabas was discussed about her blood touching his clothes, and he said, "Watch out, because her blood is purer than all of us here." It's why she just died. We could talk about this woman and say how awful human being she was for making a mistake. It's her sacrifice. It's her sincerity, and took her straight to Jannah. That is what I'm talking about. That law that we apply in this dunya is only done to establish harmony and justice. But it's not up to us to forgive and declare who's right and who's wrong and who's good and who's bad, because we do not know. We do not know. We still apply it because we have to, because it's part of the commandments of Allah. But what that person got in his heart, that's between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is why it's part of our aqidah to never say somebody who died, he went to hell, he went to paradise, regardless of how his actions look like. Remind you the story of Imam Abu Hanifa. In his time, there was a man who used to drink, Muslim. And when he died, they called him to perform the janazah, and he refused. Then he had a dream where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed him how this man was taking care of so many orphans. And he felt this deep regret. In life, we learn what we look at and what we judge not necessarily is what it is. That's why we read Surah Al-Kahf every Friday. So this is a call to grow in all aspects and to worship Allah, yes, in all aspects. And to see beyond, and to know that if we can't see beyond, there is a reality behind everything. And then behind a bad action, there is a benefit for it in this world that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's why it's allowing it to happen. Never forget that. We don't live in a world of duality, bad and good. There is no duality. The reality is unseen and not understood to us. When we take sides and aspects, this is what happened. Let's just be submitted and subject and serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And serve Him with all our capacities. And then I have spent more than 1 and 14 minutes talking about Iyyaka na'budu. And then just to finish, wa iyyaka nasta'in, and only to you we seek help. Nasta'in is from isti'ana. Ain means is from aun, which means aid, help. And it's also ana is to take something, help it to achieve a state or a stage. Yes. So, for example, isti'ana means to seek from the istif'al, which is the structure of the verb, to seek or to ask help. But a kind of help which is like an aid. It's like a help that takes me to a stage. And it's very interesting because after seeing what Iyaka na'budu implies, subhanallah, is so hard to actually, I think life is about establishing our ibadah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wa iyyaka nasta'in, and we seek your help. Your help to what? Your help to worship you as you deserve. Only to you we ask help for anything in life. But the main and the only thing that we're actually asking him to is help to worship him appropriately. When we ask Allah for health, when we ask Allah for rizq, when we ask Allah for children, when we ask Allah for any ni'mah, any blessing, let's ask ourselves, where is it coming from and for what purpose we want that? For what do we want that money? For that we want that job. For what we want that knowledge. For what we want that family. For what we done. And then let's ask ourselves why. Because if the purpose and the intention behind achieving that is not serving the purpose of our worship to him, then it's basically pointless. So every time we ask him for help is related to worship him. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. And this aid that help us to reach there. And it's like, only to you we worship, and only to you we ask help to worship you appropriately, as you deserve, as much as we can. That's the importance of, subhanAllah, this verse. And it can be separated, subhanAllah, because we can worship him as he deserves if he doesn't help us to do it. And it's like a cycle. Enable us, help us, aid us to thank you. Enable us, help us, aid us to worship you. Enable us, help us to repent to you. Enable us, help us to go back to you. I have this beautiful circle or wheel of fortune or cycle of life. And it's very interesting because here we have ni'mah, ta'a, nikmah, or ibtila, and ma'asiyah or masiyah. It's like the 4 stages of life. Ni'mah means the blessing. When we are in a state of blessing. Ta'a, we are in a state of obedience. Nikmah or ibtila, we are in a state of trial or tribulation. And ma'asiyah, we are in a state of disobedience. And I want you to look at ni'mah and nikmah, because the only letter that is different is the ain and the qaf. But the nun and the mim are exactly the same, and they are opposite. Ni'mah and nikmah are opposite. And in every stage of life, let it be whatever it can be 2 or more than 1 at the same time. Any stage that we find ourselves in life, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is expecting or waiting for us a response. When we are in the state of ni'mah, of blessing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expects from us shukr, gratitude. Because when you are given ni'mah, you should know where this is coming from. And when you are obedient to Allah, when you are in a state of obedience, you need to have khushu', which is humility. Also dhul, humble yourself, humbleness. Know that this is coming from him, not for you to grow yourself and think that you are really good. That is not the response that that ta'ah, that obedience should have. And when we are in a state of niqmah, which is calamity, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expects from us to ask with patience. And sabr is abstain ourselves from reacting in a way that is not pleasing to Him, which is a kind of obedience. And when we are in state of masiyah, on disobedience, He expects from us to do tawbah, which is a U-turn, to come back to Him. Yes, and it's a cycle, because when we do tawbah, we go back to ta'ah and we go back to ni'mah. Yes, and when we are thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's natural that we will always be, receiving ni'mah. But if with ni'mah we respond to it with arrogance, then we might go to niqmah, which is the trial. But not necessarily the trial has to come because we did something wrong. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put us in test even if we are doing the things right. It's only He teaching us, showing us aspects of ourselves that we are not aware of. And this is the cycle of life. You're always there. And we worship Him and we ask Him to help us to recognize what we went wrong, how we can do it better. As long as we live, we will go through these stages of life. But all of them deserve a response that is a way of worship Him. Because being thankful to Him is worshiping Him. Making tawbah to Him is worshiping Him. Having humility is worshiping Him. And being patient is worshiping Him too. Now, at the same time, all of them are trials, are proofs, are tests. When we are given ni'mah, is a test to see how we respond. When we are in disobedience, and He allows us to fall into the disobedience, is to see how we respond. And so on and so forth. So with this, we finish this lesson. Inshallah, next class we will continue with the following verse. We close saying our dua. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.